Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi. I play the Doctor, and you're watching EMS Productions.
Hello everybody, and welcome along to today's video where I'm going to be looking back at last week's Ice Warrior adventure, It's Empress of Mars. So this week's episode, Empress of Mars, featured the return of the Ice Warriors for the first time in about 4 years since Mark Gatiss last wrote for them, and of course, as soon as everybody saw it was Mark Gatiss, let's just say they weren't too happy, because Mark Gatiss, I think this is general fan opinion that he's never had a classic episode. They've all been good to average to absolutely terrible. Sleep no more. So I was really hoping, because I do like Mark Gatiss as sort of seeing in interviews and everything, so I was really hoping he would be able to pull off a really great story. And I think this was a sort of solid episode overall. It was good. It was kind of an episode that you're not really going to come back to very often, but it was good fun for a watch or two. I did notice when watching it, it had very much a feel of a classic Doctor Who story, obviously with the Ice Warriors returning, which are a kind of classic monster, but also in the style of the sets and everything, lots of underground caves, which we see a huge amount in Doctor Who, and just the way the episode is sort of written feels a lot like that. And even just things, sort of, it seems at least like there was pretty much zero location filming on this episode. It was pretty much all studio based in these caves, which certainly sort of represented classic Who as well, where a lot of it was studio bound. And this also probably suggests that this was more of their low budget episode, apart from maybe the Ice Warrior costumes, but certainly sets wise they didn't do any location filming, so it probably was one of the cheaper episodes of the series, shall we say. But that's not to say that really has any effect on the episode itself. It's still a very enjoyable adventure, obviously focusing around some Victorian soldiers who have suddenly ended up on Mars thanks to an Ice Warrior that's crashed onto the Earth and taken him back. And then they awaken this new Ice Queen, which is a sort of female version of the Ice Lords that we saw back in the 60s and 70s, with the sort of slightly more important Ice Warriors essentially. And now there's a female version, the Ice Queen, which was quite a sort of a fairly natural spin on it, I guess, doing something a little bit different. And I think overall they pulled that bit off quite well. It was fairly well written by Mark Gatiss in terms of having this Ice Queen, this new type of Ice Warrior as a leader of the sort of the whole pretty much Queen of Mars, essentially, back in the 5,000 years ago, whenever it was when the Ice Warriors actually ruled the Earth. And it was sort of interesting having the little sort of sparring between the Ice Warriors and the humans, and the Doctor doing his classic sort of Silurian style, trying to save the day by agreeing a peace treaty between the two of them, which never ever works, I think it's fair to say. Every single Silurian story tells you that. As does this story. He'll attempt to make peace, but it never works. And it was nice to see some quite good guest performances in this episode, particularly the character Neville Catchlove, played by, I can't remember what his name was, but he was in Victoria as well as some sort of Victorian person, from what I remember. And he did a really good sort of evil kind of performance of a guy who really just wants to be in power and kind of do everything, even though clearly a gun does not work against an Ice Warrior. So you're kind of failing quite badly there. But it was brilliant to see him get shot right at the end. It was kind of like the right guys won in the end of the episode, which is, I guess, quite satisfying for the viewer, even if it isn't always the most realistic outcome. I mean, overall, there isn't really a huge amount to say to this episode plot-wise. It's essentially just Victorians end up on Mars, they discover some Ice Warriors, they have a bit of a battle, and then they sort of agree a treaty by the soldier, whatever his name was, I can't even remember, the colonel, who then sort of agrees with them, or the Ice Queen accepts him to kind of help him out, and it all just magically ends. It was all a little bit wishy-washy of an ending, I think it's fair to say. But there just wasn't a huge amount plot-wise going on in the episode. It was kind of classic Who, with a fairly classic sort of battling invasion type of story, which just sort of ended then. So it very much had the vibes of that, which are enjoyable, but I mean, compared to some of the more other episodes of Series 10 and of recent New Who series, it was a very much a sort of simple, back to basics classic story. It was nice to really see a much bigger amount of Ice Warriors for the first time. After seeing Cold War, we only had the one single Ice Warrior who was kind of trapped in that submarine, whereas in this one we very much had a whole sort of legion of Ice Warriors battling away with all the humans and everything, so it was great to see a bit more Ice Warrior action for the first time since 1974 in the Monster Peloton, so that was a really enjoyable part of the story. In terms of the Doctor and Bill and all that kind of thing, there wasn't a huge amount going on. It was a fairly bog standard episode for those two as well. Lots of nice little moments. Peter Capaldi's brilliant as usual, but there was nothing particularly special for him to kind of do with the role or any particularly good lines or moments or anything like that. It was just a pretty standard episode. Obviously one of the more important longer term sort of parts of the episode was the whole stuff with Nardole, Missy and the TARDIS, where we see Nardole going back to the TARDIS and then suddenly it starts materialising back to Earth, back to the vault, to bring Missy out of there and everything. It wasn't made clear at all as to why the TARDIS decided to suddenly materialise back to Earth. Hopefully that will be explained later in the series, because otherwise it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it was interesting that obviously Missy kind of goaded Nardole into bringing her out of the vault to do it, but then she seemed completely accepting to just go back in there at the end. It certainly seems like there's quite a lot that's going to be going on between those two at the end of the series. And there was also some sort of hints at 12's potential regeneration, with Missy's comments of, "Are you okay? No, really, are you okay? Are you feeling okay?" It was like she knows something, but she's not really letting it on yet. I'm not quite sure. It was all very sort of mysterious and didn't really, just hinted without any real clues to that. But certainly, maybe Missy knows something. Maybe she's actually already seen 12 regenerate, possibly. It could be something as bold as that, or something like that, I don't know. And she knows it's coming towards that point, so she's starting to hint at it slightly, I don't know. Possibly something like that, but certainly there's some very interesting stuff there, which I think, I'm not quite sure if Missy's going to be involved in this week's episode, The Eaters of Light, but certainly come the finale, she's one of the main characters for the final 2 episodes. And the one other glorious moment, which I have to mention, and hats off to Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat for getting it in, was the return of Alpha Centauri after 45 years, or however long it's been, 43 years, since 1974's The Monster of Peladon, the most random of aliens that looks a little bit iffy and interesting, shall we say. And a fairly insignificant character from Classic Who in the 70s suddenly turns up again in Doctor Who in 2017. It was just a little fan cameo. I know some people are like, who on earth is this? Why do we even care? It's nothing. But it's just a nice little cameo for it. If you guys don't know who it is, Google it. From the Peladon stories back in 1972 and 74 with the Doctor, the couple based on there. This ambassador for Alpha Centauri, the planet, is called Alpha Centauri because why not? And yeah, she decided to cameo again in this episode, and they actually managed to get the original actress who did the voice for it as well, which was just absolutely brilliant. So it was just a nice little fan moment for that, I think. But other than that, there's not a huge much more to say. It was good to see lots of Ice Warriors back, some brilliant scenes with them sort of rising up and attacking all the humans. The plot was fairly bog standard, and it all was resolved a bit wishy-washily, if that's even a word. And then, yeah, we reached the end of it, and suddenly the Doctor and Missy and stuff seem to be happening. So what's going to happen in the next couple of episodes, who knows? But this episode wise, a solid 7 out of 10 from Mark Gatiss. Another one that's just, it's not sort of bad like Sleep No More was, but it's not spectacular like a lot of the previous episodes this series have been. It was just your very bog standard 6 to 7 out of 10. It's very much a Classic Who story. It would fit perfectly into Classic Who, I think, more than New Who nowadays. But it was solidly entertaining. So there we go, guys. Do let me know in the comments below if you had any other thoughts on this episode, if you thought it was better or worse than I think. I saw some people absolutely berating it and saying it was terrible. Yes, it wasn't the most spectacular piece of Doctor Who ever, but I wouldn't really say it was absolutely terrible. But if you do think that, let me know in the comments below. Let me know why. I'd love to hear. So there we go, guys. Remember to like the video, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you again very soon for another video. Goodbye.